Hi everyone, welcome to week 3. This week we'll be continuing some of our conversations on the origins of developmental theory and the construction of the subject. So to do this week, for Monday, read Erica Berman's Deconstructing Developmental Psychology, chapters 2 and 3. And also while you're reading, prepare 2 or 3 questions to frame some conversations for your virtual collaboratories. By Friday at 11:55 p.m., be sure to submit your weekly notes and also post 2 words and definitions minimum to the word bank forum, or you can also add to others' definitions here instead. By Sunday at 11:55 p.m., respond to 2 other weekly posts. Watch the still face experiment. The link is posted in week 3 on Moodle. And also participate, of course, in your group's 1-hour virtual collaboratory. Also something important here, if you haven't already, please email me with a list of the members of your virtual collaboratory group, as well as the date and time that you plan to be meeting, and also a link to your collaborative Google Doc. So some questions to frame this week. You can use these to think with in your virtual collaboratories as well. So firstly, beyond methodological limitations, what are some issues at play in the scientific study of infant development? What is Berman speaking about when she refers to the instrumental agendas that inform our vision of infancy on page 45? How might infant growth and development be entangled with economic values? What might be some of the implications of only acknowledging an infant's actions or behaviors based on instrumental value? And lastly, what is meant by biological reductionism? What are some of its implications? So to start off, this week we'll talk a little bit about Chapter 2, Researching Infancy. So this week, Berman troubles infant developmental research not only for its inability to pinpoint the exact causes of various infant behavior, though it claims truth in doing so, but also for its positioning of the Western infant as a neutral, universal figure exempt of socio-cultural contexts. So extracted from contextual spaces, the image of the infant becomes isolated in the service of research and production. So this theme of scientific technology throughout the text, in the name of truth, serves a progressive narrative of individual productivity, accumulation, and gain that is embedded in ideals of infancy, as we read this week. And moreover, as uterosciences become even more advanced, the technologies of developmental psychology are becoming present and active even before the birth of a child. So Berman writes in the quote here, framed within a scientific rationale, a universal and culture-free account of infancy bears the hallmark of the rise of the American dream, generalized to everybody else. So in this quote, Berman is alluding to an illusion of freedom attached to narratives of development, that if a child reaches a particular milestone or point in development, they're likely to become competent, successful, ready to face the world as an independent, hardworking citizen. So these narratives shape and are shaped by the social structures and institutions which frame early childhood education. So there's an underlying essence of readiness, of preparation for the future. So sort of a setting up for, working towards something, as if right now the in the moment experience is not worthy or not enough. And I think this is easy to identify. It's easy to identify these narratives as adults as well. So within the neoliberal worlds in which we find ourselves, there's always something else we ought to be working toward, the next thing in the pursuit of happiness, of freedom. What else? So this is very much the logic of the American dream that governs much Western thought, and though it may seem invisible, governs much of early childhood education. So in chapter 3, Berman discusses the emerging theories of infant social development. She argues that infant developmental theory places sociality actually within the realm of biology, as if sociality is predetermined within a child's innate abilities. Berman refers to this as biological reductionism, where supposedly social approaches to developmental research are collapsed into biology, so a child's preconfigured instinct or innate rationalities. So Berman argues that this flattens cultural variation into a universalized assumption not only about a child's brain, but also what constitutes a human. So she also speaks to theories of mind, so where a child's theories of mind take place within an isolated individual, and that these reinforce a view of a singular mind as if it's separate from the body and separate from a co-constructed social transformative world. Berman argues that these ways of viewing theories of mind are deeply informed by theories of evolution, where children's behavior is instrumental to self-fulfillment and progression and a linear development. So that behavior that falls outside of the spectrum of development is actually considered a deficit. So in this chapter, Berman examines relations between the mother and infant within this view of development. And she argues that theories of mind and attachment theory present this mother-child dyad as if they exist in a social vacuum, and that this view perpetuates an overly harmonious view of the mother-child relation, as if it is ahistorical and apolitical. She also argues that the social structures which position the mother and children in these particular hierarchies are ignored with this lens. So in other words, these theories ignore the macro, or the larger, structural systems and how they enter into and reproduce micro social relations between a mother and a child. She also writes that this model of developmental psychology naturalizes patriarchy and capitalism and presents an image of social relationships as if they're equal and harmonious. So scientific rationales of child development not only test theories, but they also reproduce them. So the structures which frame these methodologies have a self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways, and that their questions and modes of research invite answers that suit this particular way of knowing children. And these social experiments perpetuate an abstracted child as a unit of analysis, which reflects the origins of developmental psychology and reproduces that particular history and way of knowing childhood. So the westernized individual child whose social interactions fall into categories of their innate cognitive development, Berman challenges this, and she writes that this developmental model suppresses the particular, so the cultural, historical, and social construction of relations. So this week, I invite you to watch the still face experiment. The link is in the week 3 Moodle. And as you watch, consider the following questions, especially in the context of the readings this week. What claims is infancy research used to warrant, and what other interpretations can be put forward for the phenomena being described beyond what is presented in the video? So in your week 3 notes this week, I invite you to write a 300 to 400 word response to the following provocations, thinking deeply with chapters 2 and 3. So what are some technologies that frame infant development? You can look to your own practice or experience to answer this question, as well as the readings. And importantly, what anxieties, social, political, or economic, might these technologies of infant development soothe? So this week by Sunday, you're to respond to 2 other peers' weekly notes. So when you're responding to weekly notes, I want you to think with these guidelines. So try to move beyond surface acknowledgments. If you find something interesting, discuss in detail why that is and why it matters to you. Consider how the author's ideas might matter pedagogically. So these theoretical ideas, how might they come to matter in practice with children or in your own life world? Consider how this author's post provokes you to think. What questions or curiosities do you gather from engaging with this piece? what else might be at play here that the author might further attend to. So in a very supportive way, provide questions or curiosities which may extend or complexify the notes. Also, you can make further links to the readings and course content and practice. And lastly, be sure to follow the guidelines for net etiquette. And this is in the course information section on Moodle. So you don't necessarily have to answer each of these components when in your responses, but just something to think with as you are writing your responses. Also, be sure to post 2 words and definitions in the word bank or respond to others' definitions and add to those. So I think that's about it for this week. Feel free to email me if you have any questions or ask them in the general questions forum on Moodle. All right, have a great week, everyone.